Now, hello everybody. I hope you're here tonight. Lynda La Plante back again. Oh, she's such a pro. Anyway, listen, good evening to everybody. And thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you're all safe and well. I've been writing, um, as always, I never stop actually. And next week, I will begin recording the second season of my podcast, Listening to the Dead. If you've not listened to season 1 yet, you can find it on podcast app. It's very, very informative for writers if you're in any way interested in forensic science, and because you're going to hear me talking to all the scientists that helped me in every single novel, every TV thing I've ever done. Very good for writers. Anyway, this is a special Facebook Live as I'm going to talk about the next one, the new one, Judas Horse. I've got here a mock-up. Well, it's not really a mock-up. I mean, it just needs a few added things to it. And it's Judas Horse. And these are shards of glass. Pretty good, huh? Okay, Judas Horse. Now, let me tell you a little bit about where we left Jack War, DC Jack War, at the end of my first introduction of Jack War in Buried. I don't want to say too much because in case we have people that haven't read it, I don't want to ruin it. But when we left Jack War, he had uncovered his background, who his real father was, and there's sort of some darkness creeping into his seemingly incredibly happy life. Lovely wife, new baby on the way. And so there is that edge of darkness, and it will creep in a bit more in Judas Horse. That's all I'm telling you. Now, what is Judas Horse? Why have I got Judas Horse as a title? Well, basically, what a Judas Horse is in the wild Mustangs across America and for an extraordinary amount of wild Mustangs in Australia. They've got the biggest herds, 450,000 wild horses. But in America, they're around 250,000. And, they have to be very careful about their grazing land drying up, illness in the horses. And so they do need to be monitored. They remain free and in their herds. But what they do is they capture one of the Mustangs, usually the main stallion that is the head of the herd. They capture him, rope him in, take him back to the corral, and they train him. And it takes quite a while before they release him back into the wild. He will then join his herd and draw them back, straight back to the corral, which is why he's called the Judas Horse. It's sort of ultimate betrayal, really. But they're only looking after them. I mean, they're not going to destroy them. Some may have to be put down. But that is the title, Judas Horse. And I love it because I think it's a very, very powerful with loops. And you'll understand a bit when I tell you. And this is why I'm happy you're all here, because it gives me a bit of an opportunity to talk about Judas Horse and, where it's set, how I came to write it. And I'm always being asked by so many young writers in all the events that I talk at and all the lectures I give, one of the biggest questions always is, well, where'd you get your ideas from? How'd you get an idea? Basically, you you need an idea that fascinates you. If it doesn't fascinate you and you don't want to learn more and more and more about it, discard it, because you're going to have to live with this idea for your novel. as it's, growing in size, you're going to have to live with this for 18 months to 2 years. And so if you get bored with it, then you are, it is very, very frustrating, and you can't give the right energy to it. So why did I start the novel called Judas Horse? And I have to go back 2 years, 2.5, nearly 3 years. I became very fascinated by a series of burglaries that were very well documented in the sort of local papers around here, like the Surrey Comet, Wimbledon. And the burglars were taking place in Wimbledon. And they had called the burglar, the thief, the Wimbledon Prowler. And the more I read about the Wimbledon Prowler, the more fascinated I became, because they believed this man had been responsible for so many audacious burglaries in Wimbledon area for over 10 years, and they'd never caught him. He left no fingerprints. He was just something that they could not get to grips with. His modus operandi, he could monitor houses for a considerable time, knew who came, knew who went. He seemed to operate mostly in school holidays. And so that meant that a lot of families would be moving away for a couple of weeks holiday somewhere. But that was the main focus. Did he live in Wimbledon? Where was he coming from? He was also, the insidious side of this burglary was very, very distressing, because he could break into a house, perhaps just take a set of door keys and leave. The owners of the property would say, "Where did I put my keys?" "Oh, no, I thought they were in the hall." No. Well, most people have a second set of keys for their house, so you didn't think about it. Or they'd have a wallet with £800 in, and suddenly, the next day they go, "My God, I've only got 300 in this. I don't know what I've spent the money." It was that method of people not being fully aware they had been burgled. When he did hit, sometimes 2 to 3 times, he'd go back to the same property and steal. Now, Wimbledon. Why Wimbledon? It's a very, very luxurious area of London. And also, if you think about summer holidays, what have you got at Wimbledon? Mass tennis, the Wimbledon tennis. You could walk around Wimbledon with a tennis racket over your shoulder. Thousands and thousands of visitors. Who's going to suspect somebody, wandering around with a tennis racket around his back, monitoring your house? Was that what he was doing? He was adept at cutting off CCTV cameras, covering them, spraying them. So you think, for 10 years, this man robbed household after household in Wimbledon. One of them was Boris Becker. He was breaking in, removing jewelry, money, and out. He had often been in their homes when they were sleeping. So there was a real panic going on in Wimbledon. I mean, this man seemed to be unstoppable. You can only imagine how the police were ripping their hair out. Was he local? He never left a fingerprint. And then a couple of CCTV cameras caught him, but he was either had his hand up or a hat on. It was impossible to trace this man down. So it became so frustrating as the fear began to snowball. And I don't know if any of you listening have been burgled. It is a horrible feeling. I've had it. Horrible. It just feels like they've invaded you. Hideous, hideous. And the more I read about this, I kept thinking, who is this guy? Is he some master thief? 10 years he'd been there, house after. He was terrifying people. Children were terrified to go to bed by themselves. It was just a really big onslaught in one focused area of London, Wimbledon. And then one of the detectives going over the case, and they had really basically converted the search to Wimbledon. Checking, because there are a lot of back alleyways, little dark lanes. Then you have Wimbledon Common, easy way to escape. So they began to open up their investigation, open it up. And just one thing seemed to strike one officer as a bit odd. Mercedes, parked by the park, there for quite a long time. Then they checked the number plate, didn't belong to any resident. And then they did a thorough check and a further check, and they were able to determine that this Mercedes car was driven in and out of Wimbledon at various times, and they caught him on cameras all the way back to Manchester. He was coming in to Wimbledon, parking his car, waiting under cover of dark, pulling a hoodie on and robbing. For 10 years he'd been doing this, frightening, terrifying people, and they got him. He had a fish and chip shop in outer Manchester. They never found the amount of jewellery that they knew he'd stolen or money. He lived a very ordinary life. His wife and children had no idea what was going on, but he had a gambling problem. So that began the seed for me to think, good heavens, 10 years. They reckoned he had also done probably 200 to 300 more robberies than he actually admitted to. And you know, the relief, and it is a big relief because he was arrested and he was sentenced at Kingston Crown Court to 14 years. But how many had he done? How much damage had that man done to families? A number of people sold up and just left Wimbledon. They couldn't stay there anymore. A number of children had to have therapy. And you think the damage this one man did to household after household after household. And by a sheer coincidence, I got a call from an ex-detective. I called Mike. And he was just out of the force. He was a high-ranking detective, had worked in Wimbledon, and had worked on robberies. And he called me and said that, you know, if ever I needed any research, could he come and see me and have a chat? He was also interested in writing a book. And so, you know, me, oh, come around, let me talk to you. And he was so informative because he told me that before the Wimbledon Prowler, there had been another one in the early 80s. And again, the difficulty was it didn't kind of link to any other burglar that was in the nick. It was spasmodic, but they couldn't determine. He was just hitting houses. He was getting away with it over and over and over again. And Mike drew a picture for me, which is quite interesting because he drew a picture of this, a fish. And he said, what happens in burglaries when a criminal burglar begins, he often lives, I'll have to go backwards, anyway. He often lives here. And he will begin burglaring this house near to him, the other end at the end of the road. And when he gets better, he moves down and then he'll go the other side. And you can map the burglaries and know it's homing in to that top level. When he gets very confident, he's spreading the net and he's going much further afield, but he will go home up at the top. And it was such a fascinating insight into the mind of a burglar and how they processed the robberies. And I said, well, how did you catch the first one? And he said, we had no option but to wait. He didn't do it on a regular basis, same as the Wimbledon Prowler. When he was almost caught, he waited 6 months before he hit again. This time, this one, maybe 1 month, 1 week, 2 weeks. They couldn't fathom out where he was coming from. And so they plotted an area of very, very wealthy residents. And they literally honed in and sat in undercover, all in black balaclavas. And they said, we're going to wait night after night after night until he goes for it. And sure enough, he went for it. And this time, this burglar was from a very well-connected family, heroin addict. So he was only robbing when he needed a fix. His family had no notion that their 22-year-old son was a heroin addict. And so, but they got him. But that wait, hour upon hour, night after night, in gardens, hidden in alleyways, where they got him. And so the more I began to think about the mind of burglars and how they work, my Judas horse began to take shape. And so Judas Horse is taking Jack War onto an investigation into a series of robberies that are terrifying. And where are they? When you think about the Cotswolds and the rich people living in the Cotswolds, they're going to hit there. I don't want to tell too much about it because it isn't like the Wimbledon Prowler. It's something by far more dangerous because these are very, very professional. But they know, the police know, there has to be an inside man somewhere in one of those villages, a gardener, milkman, maybe a waitress from, the Soho house, the posh house. But they're up against a most extraordinary level of people. Well, I was insured, so I didn't really want to report it. But when it gets to murder, it steps up. Anyway, that's where I've been obsessed by for Judas Horse. I hope you find it as interesting, but it's also my encouragement to writers to say, do what I did. Pick and pick and pick away and learn more and more and more. I have been so fascinated by the police procedure in these robberies, and I hope you will find this kind of an interesting, because I'm always saying, look in the newspaper, pick something out of the newspaper. Anyway, that's enough about Judas Horse. I hope you will find it as fascinating as I did working on it. Now, I'm going to do a Q&A, a bit of that. I do it every time. Okay, first one is from Natalie Brown on Facebook. And she says, I've just finished Blunt Force and loved it, but it ended on such a cliffhanger. Is the next book going to pick up right where Blunt Force left off? Well, these are the Tennyson books. It's the young Jane Tennyson growing into the formidable DCI Jane Tennyson. Oh, I've dropped my notes. Just hang about there. I won't be a minute. I'll just pick them up. I'm back. So they're all the Tennyson books are about the growth of Jane Tennyson within the police force until she is the formidable character that Helen Mirren played in Prime Suspect. So each story it stands up by itself, but each ending, she is growing. In Blunt Force, we have seen her come in after being snubbed and treated appallingly by the Sweeney, and how that affected her, and how this affects her. And so it ends there, but the next book will pick her up again, How did she behave after the end of the book, Blunt Force? Wait and see, it's so good. But she's growing, and each time getting older, getting really more and more like the character portrayed by the wonderful Dame Helen Mirren. Okay. Mary Hood on Facebook. Hello, Lynda. Over the years, I've built up a great collection of your books. At times, borrowed from the library, but other times, I would always treat myself to your latest at the airport before a holiday. Anyway, it's been such a bad year, what with COVID and health issues, that I've decided I want to complete my collection of your books. Is there anywhere I can purchase my missing copies of your books and also get them signed? Well, Mary, all of my books should be available in stores, or you can order them. Ask your local independent bookstore and support them. They should be able to help. If you email me your details through my website, I'll see what I can do about getting them all signed for you. And hopefully next year you can come to an event and I could even sign them to you in person. All right? Thank you, Mary. Now, another one is from Alan Roberts on Facebook. Not so much a question, more of an observation. Of course, your books are addictive and you know that I love them. Are you aware of how much your books are a source of history education? Oh, this is so nice. I learned so much about Romany, Wales with The Legacy. And he says he's Welsh. And so much more about World War II and the Holocaust in Entwined. Thank you. Excuse me, I'll just have another sip of gin and tonic, it does help the cough. You know something, The Legacy haunts me. And for any of my fans out there listening to me today, I never intended to get into the Welsh history. I actually was writing in The Legacy. What I wanted to write was how and where did the Cray twins come to be in the East End with their mother, Violet? How do two young boys from the East End become the most notorious criminals probably in English history at the moment? And one of the people that I was interviewing, one of these, hello, darling, I know the Crays, they're all like that. Oh, yeah, I knew the mother well, darling, knew it. One of them just happened to tell me, they said, oh, their father was a Romany, a high-ranking Romany gypsy. He had the black eyes. He was called a Karenga because only gypsies living in house dwelling they're called Karengas. And I said, are they really? I didn't know that. Oh, yes, yes. He believed he came from Wales somewhere. So I'm off. I'm off. And I became so involved in researching the wonderful gypsy camps in Wales. And I went further and further back, and I just couldn't stop. In fact, I became so immersed in Romany lifestyle. I mean, I think when the book went in to be edited, they didn't know what to do with it because it was so long. It was like 1,000 pages long. They had to split it into two books. But I think because that book is very, very close to my heart. It's the first novel I wrote. I love it. And for anybody who's not read it, during this time, if you want a really good read, though I say so myself, and excuse me for trumpeting my own worth, but The Legacy, oh my God, just read it. I love it so much. And also the Holocaust, that's Entwined. That was a very, very hard book for me to write. I don't want to get into that now, but very sad for me to write that book. Took a long, long time and a lot of torture. Anyway, Faye Brailsford on Facebook again. Are you planning any more Trial and Retribution? Well, I'd like to say, never say never. But, making Trial and Retribution was exceedingly difficult. For one thing, when I went to the head of ITV to say, I wanted to do split screen. He went, oh, no. What do you mean split screen? I said, well, I've been with the forensics for the entire day, and I've watched a man taking a hair out of a buttonhole, caught in the stitches of a button. It took him nearly all day to tweeze out. It was a long hair, this long, and it had been round the button, into the stitches, and he meticulously took that fraction by fraction. I said, to me, that is so fascinating. I would like to put that on a split screen and can actually continue the action. Oh, no. He said, no, no, it won't work at all. No, I said, yes, it will, because you've also got, so much more in forensic that I can do 1 screen, 2 screen, 3, 4. And he said, oh, tell me about people on council estates. They've probably only got a 16-inch screen. He said, they're not going to be able to watch it all from split screen. And I said, those people can probably pay 5 hands at bingo at the same time. Of course they can pick it up. And he went, you're right. Now, the cost of making split screen TV is very, very high, because you do have to have the length of time. I'm talking about the buttonhole. That's costly. So each split screen is like, filming. Very, very expensive. But I loved it. I was the first to do it for TV. First. Again, blowing my own trumpet, but I was the first in with that. And I'm glad that, now it's out and you can watch it. It is really causing so many letters and fans from people saying this was so innovative. And it was, it was, and it has been, nicked from me over and over again. Anyway, Heather Simpson, Facebook. She says, thank you for answering my question last time. Great acting story. Now, about to read Cold Shoulder. I'm so glad you decided to write, as you've been constantly in my mind. Oh, isn't that nice? Stay safe. Cold Shoulder is out now. Lorraine Page. Oh, Lieutenant Lorraine Page. I'm so glad, and I thank you very much for going to get the book. The trilogy is Cold Shoulder, Cold Heart, and another cold, which I can't remember. Cold Shoulder, Cold Heart, Cold Blood. That's the one in the middle. Cold Shoulder, Cold Blood, Cold Heart. 3 terrific. But again, you say, why didn't I write any more? Why did I end Lorraine Page? And I was in Liverpool doing a book signing, and this woman came up to me. She said, I'm not speaking to you. I bought your books, and every bookshop I bought your books, and I'm not buying another book by you because you've got killed off Lorraine Page, and I'm disgusted with you. And the reason there are only 3 books, it was based on a real character, and she was a nightmare. She was very, very dangerous and very troublesome. And I really was sort of quite concerned for my life around her. And I just had to walk away. That's the truth. Okay, Nikki Williams, Facebook. Are you going to bring back Anna Travis? Everybody asks that. And yes, listen, I'm 70,000 words in, but I'm doing so much research with Quantico because I have to get this so right. But she will be coming back. And I'm so glad that everybody loves her so much. And Tina Young, Facebook. Hi, Lynda. I hope you and your family have a lovely Christmas. I want to wish you all very much happy and healthy new year. Much love. Well, I'd like to send you much love too, Tina. And I'd also want to send love to everybody that's tuned in. And, if you go to my website now, you'll be able to read the first chapter of Judas Horse and pre-order it. Well, I suppose that's got to be it for tonight, because I've only got to do half an hour. I mean, I could rub it on forever. But I'll see you before Christmas. But until then, please stay safe, wear masks, wash your hands, and try and be happy. God bless. Goodbye to you all. Jill. Here you go. Hit the button.